Yeah, good morning, student. Today we discuss about technical session on computer programming. As we know, in many company placement processes with aptitude reasoning, group discussion, there is one part which is the programming one. We check your programming skill. Basically, if you go for the IT company's placement, in that case, with the aptitude reasoning, there is one more part that is your programming skill. There are some question which is option objective based, and after that there is one test that is a programming test which assign you a one assignment, and you have to solve it. If they assign some task, they assign some coding work to you, and you have to decode it actually. So regarding to same, we are today's session. We are going to discuss about this programming languages. So I just share a screen. Now, when we talk about programming languages, now some basic terminologies there. Very first thing is a program. So program is a set of code which we are written to execute. It may vary according to the syntax of a program. That is, it is a different from C. It is different from C++. The keyword is different. The syntax is different. The method of writing a code is different. So overall, it's a program which we say a set of code which we written for the execution and to generate an output which we require. Second one is a process which we say that it's a program under execution. So a program under execution is nothing but a process. Third term is a basic term, that is a compiler. So it is important one. Whatever code we have written, need to compile it, and after compilation, the code will be generated. So it's a compiler which required, and it is different one. That is, for C it's different, for C++ it's different, for Java there is JVM, Java Virtual Machine. So it vary, and basically it is designed to compile code and generate a output. Software, we generally use this term, that is a software. And we when in your final year project, especially for IT and CSE field student, they create actually a software for a specific task. So it is a set of program which we say, a collection of program which required to complete a task, or to complete a specific what we say output which we required. Just like if we say simple program of calculator, so you have to generate a software which are enabled to perform addition, subtraction, to calculate the percentage, to calculate the profit, gain, loss, and all these things. So it is a software where we collect a set of program. Then the machine language and binary language. So as we know, the system only know the binary language, that is the language in the form of 0 or 1. So the language which are written in the form of 0 or 1, it's a binary language, but it's not possible for us to write any code in binary language. So it's a task of compiler which convert the high level language, that is the language in which we are written the code, into the low level language. And low level language is nothing but the binary language. Binary language, that means the language in the form of 0 and 1. So this language The task to convert the programming language into a binary language is done by the compiler actually. So the compiler is important to convert your high level language into a low level language or the binary language. So these are the some basic terms which we are generally used in IT field or in the to done the program task. So basically, when we talk about programming language, so programming language is divided into the two parts. One is the procedure-oriented programming language, and another one is the object-oriented programming language. So procedure-oriented and object-oriented programming language, there are some basic difference between these two programming language, which we discuss now. These are the some points which distinguish the language. One is the procedure oriented programming language, and another one is the object oriented programming language. So, in procedure oriented programming language, it follow the top down approach. So, top down approach, that means what? It start from the main. After this, we are going for the execution of some programs. At that time, this point will be clear more. So, in procedure oriented programming language, main, that means the execution of the program will start from the top and it will be ended at the bottom. In case of object oriented programming language, when we discuss about the object oriented programming language, so here the execution start from the bottom, that means the main. What do you mean? From where the execution is start is written at the bottom, and the code, remaining code, that means the methods of the program, classes, and all things are written at the top of the program. So in case of procedure oriented, that is in case of pop, the execution is from top to bottom, and in object oriented programming language, the execution is from bottom to up, that means it start from main, which are written at the bottom, and accordingly the upper code will be executed. So at start, when there is a procedure oriented programming language, just like COBOL, Fortran, so at that time, the main enhance or the main goal is to execute the logic. What is the logic of the program? And the execution of that logic is important in case of procedure oriented programming language. And in object oriented programming language, the enhance is given on the security. So security is the main concern of object oriented programming language, because when your code is uh, on the server, or we can say that it is a software is shared by everyone, just like we take the example of banking example or some college school example where the software is enhancedly used. So at that case, your data is important one, and data security is important concern. So in case of object oriented programming language, the enhance is given on the security, while in case of procedure oriented programming language at earlier of the computer science or computer development, there will be no such use of security concern. Execution or the logic is important one at that time, just to calculate simple interest or to calculate the profit or loss. So at that time, the enhance is only on the logic of the program. When we talk about the procedure oriented programming language, so the procedure oriented programming language is good for the small size of program, where the program size is small. At that case, procedure oriented is good one. But as your software or as your program is exponentially increases, and there it's a 20,000 code line of code, it's a 40,000 line of code. So at that time, it's difficult to manage your software, to manage your coding in procedure oriented, and you have to use the object oriented concept. So the main reason to use the object oriented concept is what here the program is written in modular size or in module wise. So if you have face any issue, or if there is an error at any specific uh, part of the software, so you just go and check that specific module. But in case of procedure oriented, what happen if there is an error? So you have to check the whole code from top to bottom, and then you can debug it. So for the same reason, for the large size of program, we generally prefer the object oriented programming system. Next feature is in procedure oriented. There is no advanced feature like operator overloading, then dynamic binding, then encapsulation, then inheritance, then polymorphism. Such type of feature you will not find out in procedure oriented programming, but the same feature you will find out in object oriented. Here you can use the operator overloading, there is inheritance, there is a dynamic binding, there is a polymorphism. So these all concept you will find in the object oriented, but you are unable to find out it in the procedure oriented language. Next point is important one, that is what which we discussed little bit earlier. Procedure oriented in the program is written in procedure wise manner. That means there is the whole code, or we can say that there is a whole procedure you will find out in the program in procedure oriented language, procedure oriented programming system. But when we go for the object oriented system, the program is written in module wise. So there are the different module. For example, if you have to calculate the profit, so there is one model to calculate the profit. So if you have to calculate the loss, there is one model to calculate the loss. If you have to calculate the average of your transaction, so there is one model. So likewise there is a model. So if you have to find out any error or any problem in the specific profit part, so you have to just go for the module of the profit and you will check it or you will debug it. But what happen in case of procedure oriented language? If you have generate an error, so there will be no such module, and you have write it in the module wise. So you have to check one by one whole code, and you have to debug it, so it takes a lots of time. So it's the main problem with the procedure oriented. And it's what we can say that it's the beauty of object oriented programming system, where you will find out the program in the module wise, and it's easy to debug it. One more important features which we are not added here, but it's an important one, and because of that, there is a great revolution in IT industries. We will find out the feature is named as inheritance. So inheritance is what? The ability to reuse the existing code. So it provides the ability to your program to use the existing code, and there will be no need to write the same code for the same task again and again. For example, if I have a program to calculate the simple interest, and I have to use it in another program to calculate the simple interest same, so I just use the module of the previous program and I will reuse it. So it's a beauty of object oriented programming language. So object oriented programming language provides the features like inheritance. It will reduce the cost up to the great extent of software development, and also time also. So time and cost both are reduced in terms of object oriented system because of the inheritance, because it's the ability to use reuse the existing code for the existing one. But in case of procedure oriented programming, you will not find out such type of features. That means there is no inheritance features. So if you have to use the code of say calculate simple interest, for example, in another model, so you have to write it again in case of procedure oriented, and then you are able to use it. But it will not like in object oriented, where you will find out that reusability of existing code in the form of inheritance. So this is the main what we can say that the features of object oriented programming system. So there are some example of procedure oriented programming language, just like COBOL, then Photon also, then C language, which we are use widely. So, but in case of object oriented programming language, the C++, which is the extension of C language, then Java, then .NET. So these are the example of the object oriented programming system. So now in industry, in IT industry, if we find there are the lots of company which rely on the object oriented programming system for the development of their softwares. As we know, what is software? Software is a set of program. So if we collect a lots of program and create a one set, so that set is also known as the software. So many IT industries nowadays are rely on the object oriented programming system. So these are the some basic terminology related to programming, computer programming, which we discuss. One more thing, some students generally ask me a question, sir, why there is a need of programming language, or why we use it? So the reason behind that, programming language or computer programming language, we say it's important or it's needed. What happen, if we have to communicate to a specific entity, so it's important to know the language of that specific entity. For example, if we are going to the hotel and we order for some item, just like say breakfast and other things, so it's important to communicate with the language of that specific waiter. If that waiter know Hindi, so you have to give the order in Hindi. But if you are don't know Hindi English, so it's unable for you to give the order, and it's also difficult for the waiter to serve you. So it's important because language is what the communication channel between two entities. If we don't have enough knowledge about the language, so it's not possible to perform your task or to complete your order, whatever. So for the same reason, we required some what we say that some type of language knowledge, uh, so that the we can execute our task equivalently. If I have to execute my task, or if I have to execute, I want to perform my task through the computer system, so it's important that we must know the languages which are already known to the system. So computer system only know the programming language, they don't know about English, Hindi and other things. Definitely they interpret internally through the different types of software. Just today we discuss about the compiler. So it's important to know the programming language. For example, if I have to just add two numbers, but and if I give the instruction to the system through the programming languages, then only the system will be able to execute that task. Otherwise it's difficult for the system to execute the your task. For the same reason, we require to know about the programming languages which are known to the system, so that we can efficiently communicate with the system and we are able to execute our task. Our task is nothing but program. You just compare whenever I use this word task, so you just compare it with the program. Program is task for the system, and whatever task you have to given, you have to write a program for that specific task. For example, I just give to calculate the addition of two number, or to calculate the simple interest, or to calculate the profit in the transaction, or to calculate the loss in the transaction. So all this type of task, or the if I want to execute from the system, so definitely it's prerequisite that I must know the language which are known to the system. So now we move towards the programming, because it's important one to know the logic And when we go for the programming system, so it's important to know about the logic. If your logic is clear, so it's easy for you to create a program in any languages. So there is simple program which I just written here. We use two header file. One is stdio and another one is the conio.h. So remember, std is the standard input output and conio is what the console input output. So when we say console, so console is nothing but your output screen. So if you I just compile it and when run, you will get a message welcome in C. So this is your output screen. This is your output screen where you will get the output. So the function which are written to support this output screen, we require the console input output header file, and these are the compiler or which we have to use to write a code. So it is a standard input output. So it's important uh, to include this to header file. Basically the program I written here in C language, so the I use the extension .c. .c is there. For any programming language, there are three types of instruction basically. One is the variable declaration instruction. So here you can declare your variable, which type of variable you are going to use in your program. Second instruction is the logical instruction. So the logic is what logic you are use it to write that specific program. And third one is the input output type of instruction. Input output means what input you required from the end user, and what output you have to give to your end user. There are more two more terms. One is the end user and another one is the programmer. So end user is the user which are going to use your program. At the end, he don't know about the coding, he don't know about the language, he don't know about any particular concern regarding to program. He just know how to use it program, just like a railway reservation software. We don't know in which language it's written. Generally we don't know how it will execute it. We don't bother about that. We just use it, we reserve our tickets, and we can travel. So like that, it's the end user that he don't know about your programming, he don't know about any system. Another one is the programmer. Programmer is the person who writes the program. Actually he know everything about the program, and he can debug the problems in the your program or say in the software. Now whatever will be the three types of instruction which are now discussed. One is the variable declaration instruction, another one is the logical instruction, and third one is the IO instruction, input output type of instruction. So using these three instruction, we are going to write a simple program to add two number. So very first we have to include two files. One is the hash include hash include stdio dot h for header, std for standard, io for input output. Simple. Dot h for header, io for input output, std for standard. You can read reversely from right to left. Then hash include, again it's a header file. Header file is what? Conio dot h. Again dot h header file, io for input output, conio for console. Now as we know, every program start with the main keyword. It's main is the keyword, and main is functions also. If I use this parenthesis, so it's defined that the main is the function, and it's what we say, it's user defined function. There are two types of function: library function and user defined function. We will look it later on. Presently we just remember, uh, we start our program through the main keyword. So very first instruction is logical uh, variable declaration instruction. So I know if I add two numbers, so I requires the two variables to receive that two numbers. and one variable to perform the addition of these two numbers. So I use these three types of variable. Okay. After that, where there is one function CLR. This function what do? This function just clears the output screen. Just like in your class, if there is a lecture, third lecture or fourth lecture, so the when teacher come for the third lecture, he will erase the blackboard with duster. Why? Because the previous teacher whatever written in the blackboard need to clear it. Then and only then he can use that blackboard for the execution of its lecture. Likewise, if there is the output, just like previously we write a program of welcome in C, so I have to erase that output from the output screen. For the same reason I use CLR, and definitely this function related to output screen, that means console screen. So for the CLR we use the header file conio.h, console input output.h. Now I require two values from user, so I just mention here enter any two number. So enter any two number, then scanf function. So scanf function will use to receive the two values. So I use %. So ampersand sign is for the addressing, because num1, num2, and sum is all the variables which are created in the memory, but the compiler must know where it's stored. So for that we use the sign ampersand. So ampersand of num1 and ampersand of num2. After that we use our logic sum is equal to num1 plus num2. So here it's a logical instruction. Three type of instruction I uh, discuss with you. One is the variable declaration, where I use the variable declaration. This we can say that the logic that I just think that I require two number from the user, so it's important to give the output to user. Then and only then he can enter the number. For that I use the printf function. Then I think that yeah, definitely I required some variable to store this two value in a specific variable. So I use the num1, num2, and I have to give the address to means compiler know where it's stored num1 and num2 in the computer memory. So I use the ampersand sign. Ampersand sign will define the address where that num1 or num2 in the memory is there. Then we perform the addition num1, num2, we add this to number. It's a simple logic to perform the addition. And now we require to print it. So printf, and you just concentrate on the code. Whatever I write here, summation is equal to %d, and then sum. Why sum? Because your variable, because your answer is stored in the sum. Now getch is required. Why getch? It's a get character function. So whatever you have write, it must be stick, it must be hold out on the output screen. So for the same reason we required some type of function getch. So again it's related to the console screen, output screen. So conio.h file is important for the same function. So overall CLR and getch, these two are the function which are related to the console screen or the output screen. So we required conio, console input output .h file, and scanf and printf is your the general scanf and printf function, which are the standard input output function which we require to gather the data from the user and to print the data. So for that we require the standard input output type of file, header file. Now to save this, you have to just click file on save. Now it's C program, it's not a C++ program. So we have to remove PP, and here just give some name, PR1, program 1. and we save it. Now we compile it. So it's the work of compiler to check the program. If there is any error or any warning, so he will inform us to this screen. Now there is no error, no warning. So we just move forward. Now we run it. So when we run the program, now you observe the previous output will be clear out. Why it's clear out? Because we use the clr function, so it clear the output of the previous program. So simple. I used to variable values 45, 56. Now when I entered 45 and then 56, so through ampersand of num1, 45 will going to stored in num1. Because if you remember, when we use the scanf function, there is ampersand of num1 we write first, and then ampersand of num2. That means the first value are going to stored in num1, and the second value are going to stored in num2. So 45 will going to stored in num1 variable, and 56 are going to stored in num2 variable. Now there is one correlation. 45, 56 are the constant. Okay, 45 is 45 and 56, it's remains same throughout the universe. Okay, their value will not change, so it's a constant. And num1, num2 means what? It's a variable. Variable means what? Whose value may change. Variable value may change. For example, here I entered num1, num2 is 45, 56, so the value of num1 is 45 and num2 is 56, but some other guy will going to store 100 and 200. At that time the value of num1 is 100 and the value of num2 is 200. So what we can say that the variable value may change as per time, as per user, but the constant value remains same throughout the universe. So it's the main difference between the variable and constant. So if I entered it, so you will get the answer. Summation is 101. Okay, so it's a very simple program. So there are some important thing which we have to keep in mind. Very first thing which I clear about the variable and constant. Constant remains same throughout the universe, just like a numbers, alphabets, and variable may change as per the user, as per the program, as per the requirement. Okay. Uh, After that, there is a thing that variable is important to store the value. Unless and until you are not going to declare the variable, you are unable to store the value. And if you are not able to store the value, you can't perform any logic on that values. Okay, so it's important to use the variable to store the values. Now the three types of instruction which I already clear with you. Very first instruction is variable declaration instruction, where we can declare the variable. Second is the input output type of instruction. For example, in this program I require to input from the user, that is num1 and num2. And the third one is what we can say the logical instruction. So it's what about the logic which we required to uh, perform or execution of the program. So it's simple one program. Likewise, the C language program provides the different utility, like the operators or the conditions. For example, in second program now which we're going to discuss about to find even and odd, it's simple one. In next session I will going to cover two important topic of the programming, C programming, that is function and pointer. Both are very much important, and we will find out the lots of questions and lots of program depending on these two topics, so which I am going to cover in the afternoon session. Now today's morning session we are just going to cover some simple program, so that you are be familiar with this. So here again, if you have to find out some Here we are going to find number is even or odd. So the what is the logic of to find the number is even? Very simple. If you are going to divide any number by 2 and we get a remainder 0, at that time the number is even. Okay, so the logic is simple. If you know logic, you can build it in your program. So the important concern in programming language, you must be clear about your logics. So what here, you just have to receive one number from the user and you have to check it it's even or odd. So I just use in num. There are one function clr scr, clr scr. Okay, now you have to receive the number from the user and you have to store it into the num variable. So I use printf function and here I just give a message, enter any number. Okay, now there are two possibilities, either number is even or odd. Okay, it may be the even or it may be odd. So while in the situation where we have to select a one condition out of two, just concentrate on my words. If we have to select a one condition out of two, in that case we use if else statement. We use the if else statement. The syntax is simple. We have to use keyword if. We have to mention the condition with if keyword. The condition is simple. If num divide by 2, अगर num को if we divide a num by 2 and we got the remainder 0, so we have to check the remainder. So num mod 2, mod operator give you the remainder, division operator give you the quotient. So if I use the division operator, at that time we will get the quotient, just like 10 divided by 2, so quotient is 5, so 5 is the result of division operator. And if I divide 10 by 2 and I got the remainder 0, so 0 is the result of the modulus operator. So this is the modulus operator, mod, which we use here, and equal to 0. So if num mod to equal to 0, so we have to give output here. So printf, if this condition is true, that means number is even. So we just print that number, %d is even number. And here we have to print this num. So for example, if anyone enter 10, so we will get the output 10 is even number. But if this condition is fails, if this if condition is fails, then you have to write the else block for the same. We write here else, and again we have to print at this stage. If this condition is false, that means your number is odd, so % is odd number. This one is there num. Okay, we just forgot semicolon, so enter the semicolon here also. Remember, after conditions we will never mention the semicolon. That means you will not find the semicolon here. Okay, if num mod to equal to 0 is just there, no semicolon. After else also there will be a no semicolon. Okay, so you have to just keep it after printf scanf statement and variable declaration. Don't use in conditions. Afterwards you will use going to use the loops also. At the time also you have to keep in mind that there will be a no semicolon after the loop. Just end the program here. So it's a simple program where we use the if else statement. If else statement is that if we have to use a single condition out of two, that means in this program there are only two possibility, either the number is even or odd. So we save it same way, we are rename it as tr2. Here we use dot c, and now okay. Okay, so we compile it to check any error, and we run it. It will not show any output. Why? Because we missed to use one function, that is a get ch. It is important to hold your output on the output screen. So just compile it, zero error. Now we are going to run. Now it will stop. So enter any number is even. It's the output of the previous program when we are going to use without any getStage function. Now if I compile it again, compile and run, so that output will be clear. Oh, sorry, one mistake from my side. I will not use scanf function. That's the to receive this number percent of now. Now it's okay. Basically, we are not going to use this number, so we not provide any what we say that any variable to store that specific value which are entered by the user. Now we use this scanf function. Now it goes enter any number, and if we use 845, so number is 845 is odd number. So again, if we run it, and if I use 500 entered, so it's a even number. So it's about the program to check the number is even or odd. So if the number is even, for in that case the if block will be going to execute, and if the number is odd, in that case if block will not be execute and else block will going to execute. Keep in mind, if you use the if else statement in your program, so at the time out of if else only one block will be executed. Either it may be if or either it may be else. It will never happen that the both the block are going to be executed. So it's only a single block, that is it may be a if or it may else depending on the condition. Third point you have to keep in mind, if the condition inside if block if sorry if the if condition is satisfied, whatever written after if keyword, then the if block will be going to execute. And if your condition is fails, if your condition is fails, at that time the else block will be going to be executed. Okay, so condition fails, else block will executed. Condition clear, correct, if block will be executed. But it will never happen that your both the condition or both the block will be executed. It will never happen. So here also, likewise, previous program we use three types of instruction. One is the variable declaration instruction. So variable declaration, that means we are going to declare one variable num. Then variable declaration, after that IO input output type of instruction. So input is what we require the number as an input from the user. So we have to give some message to output screen, because end user only know the output screen. He are able to watch only output screen. He don't know about this compiler, or he don't know about the program. So we have to interact with the user through that specific screen only, through that specific output screen only. So for the same reason, we are going to print the message using the printf function, entering the number, and that message will be reflected on the output screen. After that, user will enter that number. So the same number are going to required to store in the variable num variable. And for the same we use the function scanf function. So scanf function is important to store that value into that num variable. So for that we require to give the compiler the address of that num variable. So we use the sign ampersand and sign. Whatever and sign you are able to see here, it's nothing but the ampersand sign. Ampersand define the address of. So at what address you are going to store that specific value. So for the same we use the ampersand sign. So ampersand of num is there. uh, so that value, that means if I entered 500, so 500 are going to stored in the num variable which are defined somewhere in the memory. And after that we perform the logical operation. Variable declaration instruction is there. After that type instruction is there, and now the logical instruction. So logical instruction is that we have to check whether the number is even or odd. So for that, what's the logic? It's simple mathematical logic, that if number divided by 2 and we get the remainder 0, at that time the number is even. And if the remainder is not 0, then the number is odd. So we use the if statement because 0 is greater than 1. We use some operators. So it's a modulus operator. Modulus operator gives the remainder. Always keep in mind. Gives the remainder. For example, so now is compared with the word double equal. We have it will that means remainder is 0. But if it is not, if it is not